in the deep center of the galaxy, where stars cluster like glowing beads and planets orbit in tight, glittering lanes, the Galactic Assembly Hall stood suspended in space, a vast, shimmering structure built from crystal, metal, and light, rotating slowly above a white dwarf sun. Inside, the Council of Species had gathered, rows upon rows of delegates seated in rings around a central platform. It's representing worlds older and more powerful than most could imagine. There were beings made of light, others that breathed methane, and some that communicated only in waves of thought. Yet today, despite their differences, they all shared a single, united goal: to pass judgment on Earth. A long, low sound echoed across the chamber as the high speaker rose, her skin glistening like silver, voice amplified by the structure itself. She spoke without anger, but with cold certainty. The human race has been reviewed. Our findings are final. They are unstable, dangerous, and unfit for further contact. Holographic images filled the air, cities in ruins, wars of the past. The slow burning of forests, oceans swallowed by plastic, and skies poisoned by smoke. The delegates watched, many shaking their heads or pulsing with quiet disapproval. The experiment has failed, another counselor added, her words sharp. Earth is to be sealed. No ships in, no ships out. The human world is to be left to its fate. We must not intervene further. There were no protests. Not the elders of the Solari cluster, not the ice thoughts of the Narcal swarm, and not the wandering minds of the cloud-like Venari. The vote passed quickly, unanimous. Earth was officially declared a closed system. The silence afterward was thick, like gravity pressing down on the chamber. To the rest of the galaxy, humanity was now a lost cause, a failed project, a species better forgotten. Far across the stars, deep in the Sol system, Earth floated in the dark like a wounded animal. The surface showed signs of life, yes, but from orbit it appeared quiet, too quiet. Orbiting satellites had gone dark. Communications had ended. Cities were dim. From the outside it looked as if humanity had finally collapsed under its own weight. But the truth was very different. Beneath the surface, below ruined cities and buried stations, humans were still alive. And more than that, they were watching. Old telescopes hidden inside hollowed-out asteroids tracked council ships. Sensors long thought destroyed quietly. Pinged nearby traffic. Deep under the Martian crust, networks buzzed with quiet activity. And in a hidden chamber somewhere beneath the frozen ice of Europa, a man known only as Agent Kellen Vior watched the council broadcast with a steady gaze. His face was calm, but his mind raced. He was the last human embedded in the Galactic Assembly, a ghost hidden in plain sight. As the decision was announced, he didn't flinch. He had expected this. Earth had been waiting for this very moment. Without speaking, he turned to a small console and typed in a short message. Just one sentence. They think we're broken.
Got them.
Then he sent it, encrypted in a way no species could crack, bouncing through old Cum's buoys, reaching deep into the hidden human network that still operated in secret across the solar system. The Council believed that by cutting Earth off, the problem was solved, that no humans would ever rise again. But they didn't know the full truth. For years, humans had known this moment would come. They had seen the signs. Trade had slowed. Patrols had increased. Their allies had fallen silent. So they had gone. Underground, not in fear, but in preparation. Deep inside what was once an abandoned mining station near Saturn's rings, a small team of engineers gathered around a flickering display. When Kellen's message arrived, they smiled. It's time, one of them whispered. Across the belt, old cargo ships, once left to rust, powered up quietly. Hidden hangars opened. Grotic arms moved with purpose. All of it unseen. The illusion of Earth's fall had worked. The galaxy had looked away. And that had given humanity something far more valuable than sympathy time. Time to prepare. Time to plan. Time to build something the galaxy would never expect. Meanwhile, back at the assembly, the council dismissed the meeting with satisfaction. The delegates drifted away, pleased with their decision.
Oh no.
No one noticed the faint signal that had flickered between relay stations just moments earlier. No one questioned how quickly the humans had gone silent. They believed the danger was over, that humanity was contained. But in truth, they had done exactly what the humans had hoped. They had stopped watching. They had turned their backs. In that moment, humanity had been given its greatest weapon: freedom in the shadows. Far below Earth's shattered cities, voices gathered in secret bunkers, leaders no longer shown on global broadcasts, gave quiet speeches to groups of loyal scientists, engineers and explorers. They spoke not of revenge, but of survival, of escape, of a future not shaped by the Council but by their own hands. They knew they could not fight the galaxy, not yet, but they could leave it behind, and somewhere, hidden in the dark between worlds, the beginnings of that plan were already humming to life. Engines cold for decades sparked once more. Artificial minds reactivated their cores. Blueprints stored in fragmented pieces across dozens of locations reassembled themselves. They called it Project Enoch, name chosen not by accident but as a quiet declaration, a new beginning, a great departure. As Earth's sky remained quiet and the Council's ships turned away, the humans waited. They did not shout, they did not cry, they simply prepared, because they knew the galaxy was no longer theirs, but the stars beyond might be. As the Galactic Council celebrated its decision to isolate Earth, confident in the belief that the human species had fallen into silence and ruin, they failed to notice what was unfolding far beyond their reach, in the cold, distant shadows of the Sol system. Where few dared to look and even fewer believed anything could survive, life had never stopped. It had only hidden. Among the broken remains of old colonies and forgotten mining stations deep within, icy caves on Europa, and beneath thick layers of dust in the asteroid belt, human outposts still lived, quiet, patient, and determined. These were not random survivors. These were engineers, scientists, navigators, and builders, people chosen and trained long before the Council had passed its final judgment. They had known the end would come, but they had not accepted it. For years they had worked in silence, powered by secrecy and fueled by purpose. Piece by piece, ship by ship, they had begun building something greater than Earth had ever known. It was called Project Enoch, name whispered in dim control rooms and darkened corridors, spoken with both hope and fear. It was not a weapon. It was not a trap. It was a way out. Their goal was not to fight the galaxy that had abandoned them, but to escape it entirely. They would leave behind the chains of judgment and the watchful eyes of the Council. Project Enoch was not just a fleet. It was a moving civilization, a collection of mobile habitats, generation arcs, and deep space vessels built to survive the endless stretch between stars. They would go where no species had ever gone. The mapped galaxy. Beyond the borders of any known system, it's out into the void, to build a future of their own making. At the heart of this operation stood Commander Riva Tran, a woman whose name was never spoken in the Council, but whose legacy would one day echo across the stars. She had been a fleet admiral before the Council's ban, a strategist known for her calm thinking and fearless leadership. After the lockdown, she had disappeared from public view. Many thought she had died in the fall of Earth's last orbital station. But Riva had simply gone underground, deeper than anyone expected. She now commanded the entire Project Enoch network, overseeing hundreds of teams across moons, asteroids, and hidden orbital platforms. Her voice carried through encrypted comms, calm and measured, always aware, always precise. She spoke to her people not of revenge or anger, but of preparation and unity. "We don't need their approval," she once said in a private transmission. "We only need our freedom and the courage to reach it." The ships being built were massive. Some were as long as cities. Others carried entire forests within sealed domes, with artificial weather and rivers that would flow for generations. They were powered by cores designed to last 1,000 years, systems so advanced even the Council would be surprised if they saw them, but no one had. That was the plan. Everything was hidden, from the movement of parts to the final assembly. Even the energy signatures were masked to look like debris or solar noise. The council had not noticed because they had stopped looking. Their belief in humanity's downfall had become their blindfold. And now, the final stages of construction were underway. In 3 cycles, less than a year, Project Enoch would launch. Humanity would vanish from the galaxy before the council ever realized what had happened. But secrets never stay buried forever. In the outer fringes of the galaxy, on worlds where the council's grip was weakest, whispers began to spread. Small. Traders who had once done business with Earth claimed they had seen movement near the Sol system lights on moons that were supposed to be abandoned. Signals too complex to be natural. A few brave species, those who had once counted humans as allies, began to listen. Among them were the Valari, a peaceful, insectoid race known for their deep memory and quiet wisdom. They remembered the human spirit, not perfect, but full of fire and life. And when they heard the rumors, they did not dismiss them. One of their thinkers, Elder Narrowan, spoke softly in a private session of their ruling circle. "The council does not fear destruction," he said. "It fears the unknown. Nothing is more unknown than a humanity that walks beyond their control." Meanwhile, in the council itself, the cracks began to show. A few members started to question the quarantine. They asked for updates, for surveillance reports, but were told there was nothing to report. One delegate, from a small aquatic species, dared to speak openly. "If humanity is truly gone, why seal the door so tightly?" There was no answer. The High Speaker dismissed the comment without discussion. But behind the polished walls and perfect smiles, unease began to grow. What if they were wrong? What if Earth had not died, but evolved into something beyond their reach? The very idea was unsettling. Back in the Sol system, Riva stood in the central chamber of Enoch Prime, the largest of the Arcs. It was nearly finished, layers of hull gleaming under artificial lights. Massive engines humming quietly as test cycles ran through their final checks. Around her, screens showed the status of other ships. The Horizon Gate, Echo Flame, Solara's Wing, each one a home, a seat, a chance. She looked at the countdown. 92 days. Just over 3 months until the launch. Her eyes did not show fear. Only focus. She knew the council would not stay blind forever. They had to be ready to move before the council realized the truth. "We have one shot," she told her crew, "and we won't miss it." Across the hidden network, thousands of humans continued to work. Families trained for life among the stars. Children studied star maps instead of geography. Every tool, every system, every choice was made with care. This was not just an escape. It was a beginning. In the vast silence of space, where no law reached and no judgment echoed, humanity would find something they had lost long ago: hope. And in doing so, they might inspire more than their own kind. For now, they remained shadows. But soon, the stars themselves would know their names. The silent build was almost complete. For years, Project Enoch had remained the best-kept secret in the galaxy, hidden beneath layers of silence, shadows, and carefully planned deception, but no secret lasts forever. Somewhere deep within the Galactic Council, a small group of delegates had grown uneasy. They had watched the Council's actions with quiet doubt, questioning the fairness of sealing off an entire species without room for growth or redemption. One of them, a young strategist from the Valari delegation named Sorel, had seen enough. She had heard the quiet rumors, the scattered reports, and fragments of coded signals that others chose to ignore. Now, faced with growing fear that the Council was not only wrong but dangerously blind, she made a choice that would change everything. Using a hidden relay station on the edge of Valari's space, she leaked a full packet of intelligence to the Council's archives, encrypted, undeniable. The data included images of massive engines being assembled on Europa, heat signatures from deep inside Saturn's rings, and most shocking of all, the blueprints of Project Enoch itself, clearly labeled and logged, showing the scale of what humanity was building. When the information spread through the inner circle of the Council, panic followed like a storm. The delegates had believed Earth was lost. that the humans had either destroyed themselves or faded into quiet extinction. But now they knew the truth. Humanity was not only alive, they were escaping. Worse still, they had nearly finished. The council chambers buzzed with urgency. For the first time in years, emergency meetings were called. Words were thrown like weapons. Some called it betrayal. Others claimed it was impossible. And a few argued that it was their own fault for turning away too soon. But in the end, the emotion that gripped the chamber most was not anger, it was fear. Not fear that humanity would retaliate, but that they might succeed. That humans, once thought defeated, would vanish into the stars and build something new, beyond council reach. If that happened, other species might follow. The tightly held control of the council over smaller, struggling civilizations could begin to fall apart. If humans could escape judgment, others might try. That was the real threat. The council's response was swift. They ordered a full blockade around the Sol system. War fleets, long held in reserve, were dispatched with orders to surround Earth and its nearby moons. No ship was to enter or leave. Drones, patrols, and sensor traps were sent ahead. The goal was not to destroy, at least not yet, but to contain. They still believed they could stop the launch if they moved quickly enough. But in the deep command chamber of Enoch Prime, Riva Tran stood over the central display and watched as red markers began appearing across the outer edge of the system. She knew immediately what it meant. Council had discovered them. There was no more time for testing, for small adjustments, or second-guessing. She called her senior officers and made a single statement. Advance the schedule. Pull ships. Launch in 5 days. Across the scattered outposts of Project Enoch, alarms sounded not in panic, but in preparation. Engineers worked around the clock. Families were moved onto the Orcs. Final systems were brought online. The quiet rhythm of secrecy was replaced by focused urgency. They had planned for 10 weeks. Now they had 5 days. But they would not back down. Riva's voice echoed through the encrypted network, calm and clear. This is not a mistake. This is the moment we built for. If they fear us now, let them. We're leaving, and they won't stop us. Meanwhile, across the galaxy, the leak did not go unnoticed. While the council tried to contain it, whispers spread fast, on smaller planets, where council control was more rumor than rule, beings began to talk. Stories of human strength and stubbornness re-emerged. The Valari, whose own thinker had released the truth, quietly began sending old data routes towards Sword. Paths through space not marked on any star maps. A small freighter from the Nomari Trade Guild, captained by an old friend of Earth, dropped a shipment of rare mineral cores near Jupiter's orbit, knowing the humans would find them. Even some council engineers working under strict orders secretly left flaws in the incoming blockade. Holes just wide enough for a fleeing ship to pass through, if it moved quickly and at the right angle. These quiet acts of support were small, but they mattered. Because for the first time in years, someone was helping humankind to rise in power, but to rise in freedom. In the final hours before the launch, the human network burned with activity. The Arcs were powered, secured, and prepared. Hidden launch codes were synchronized. Children were placed into sleep pods for the long journey ahead. Stars once symbols of exile now called to them like open gates. Above it all, Riva stood in her command tower, eyes fixed on the live star map. She knew the risks. Some ships might not make it, some would be caught, but most would fly. And if even one Arc made it beyond the Council's borders, that would be enough to prove something vital, that humanity could not be caged. That their future was not a sentence to be served, but a path to be carved. The countdown had begun. And across the galaxy, all eyes both loyal and fearful turned towards Sol, waiting to see if the humans would fall or rise. The stars above the Sol system pulsed faintly as the long-awaited day arrived, a day not of war, but of departure. Deep within the rings of Saturn, in the ice caves of Europa, and beneath the dusty rock of Ceres, humanity's great ship-Sark-class vessels, built in silence and secrecy, began to rise from their hiding places. Their engines lit up slowly at first, massive blue cores glowing with ancient energy. then burst into full life, sending waves of light across the darkness. One by one, they emerged from their shelters, their metallic hulls reflecting the lone of distant suns. The launch had begun. Across the system, alarms echoed within Council warships as the blockade responded. Dozens of ships turned and accelerated toward Earth and its moons, their sensors locking onto the fast-rising human fleet. But humanity was not charging into battle. It had never planned to fight their way through. Their goal was never to conquer it, was to survive, to escape, to reach the stars untouched by Council control. And for that, they had prepared a different kind of war. Commander Riva Trans stood at the bridge of Enoch Prime, eyes scanning the main display as fleet markers blinked. Across the screen, behind her, the crew moved quickly, their faces tense but calm. They knew the risks. Each one of them had chosen this mission, knowing it might be their last. Riva gave a short nod to her second-in-command, then activated the final stage of the escape plan. Dozens of decoy fleets scattered in every direction, smaller ships made to mimic the signature of the Orcs. Breaking away from the main group to draw attention, some flew toward known Council patrol paths. Others vanished behind moons and asteroids. As planned, the Council warships turned to chase them, believing the real fleet had splintered in panic. In reality, only a few of the decoys carried passengers. Most were empty shells, built only to buy time. Meanwhile, the true Orcs, heavy and silent, moved forward through hidden channels mapped long ago by human scouts. These were narrow gravitational corridors, unstable and dangerous, but unmonitored by Council systems. It was a bold plan, and it was working, at least for now. Riva watched silently as the first Orc, Solara's wing, broke through the outer edge of the blockade and disappeared into the deep void. Another followed, Horizon Gate, then Echo Flame, but not all ships made it. Some decoys were destroyed. Within minutes, caught in the crossfire of skirmishes, a few real Orcs, unable to cloak in time, were intercepted. Riva's eyes tightened as a red marker blinked. Falcon's reach lost. No signal, no survivors reported. But there was no time to mourn. The rest of the fleet was still moving. She gave the next order. All remaining Orcs, phase, jump in sequence. Do not wait. If you can make it, go. Across the command lines, voices confirmed the jumps. One after another, the ships began to vanish from known space, disappearing through narrow windows between gravitational currents, passing into unknown regions. Back on the command ships of the Council, panic grew. They had underestimated the humans again. The fleet was not only escaping it, was doing so with precision and coordination they had not expected. For a moment, the Council stood frozen, unsure of how to respond. Destroying the Orcs now, after so much silence, would not only break their own laws but send a message of fear to every species watching. If humanity could build this in exile, what might others do under pressure? But not all Council forces hesitated. A small group broke formation and charged toward Riva's position. Locking weapons onto Enoch Prime, Riva saw them coming. Ship was the largest, the slowest, and now the last. She had stayed behind to make sure the others escaped. Now the risk was closing in fast. Shields raised. Alarms sounded. Her crew stood ready. Riva whispered quietly, "This is it." With a surge of power, Enoch Prime began its escape run. It pushed forward through the last corridor, engines glowing so bright they lit up the black. Council ships fired, their beams flashing across the hull, damage registered, system strained, but the ship moved forward, cutting through the dark like a torch through fog. At the last second, with its structure shaking and lights flickering, Enoch Prime jumped. One blink it was there, the next it was gone. Silence returned to the soul. System. What remained of the human outposts shut down, their job done. The Council ships slowly lowered their weapons, scanning for targets that no longer existed. On their monitors, only static remained, no trace of the Orcs, no trail to follow. Humanity had vanished. They had not fought to conquer. They had not stayed to argue. They had simply left. And somewhere, deep within their high towers, far from the stars, the council leaders stared at the reports in stunned silence. They'd believed humanity was broken, beaten, and scattered. But now they understood the truth. Humanity was never theirs to control. They had mistaken silence for surrender, and in doing so, they had allowed something powerful to be born not. In fire, but in freedom. Across the stars, the legend began to grow. Humanity had escaped. In doing so, they had changed the future of the galaxy. Years had passed since the day the stars above, soul lit up with the fires of escape. Now, far, beyond the edges of every known map, where no patrols flew and no council laws reached, the fleet of humanity drifted in calm silence. They had traveled farther than anyone believed possible through dead systems, ancient voids, and starless reaches where the only light came from their own ships. The great Orcs, though scarred and weathered, still held strong. Inside there, walls, forests had grown taller, children had been born, and old pain had softened into purpose. Life had not just survived, it had adapted, expanded, and moved forward. On the observation deck of Enoch Prime, Commander Riva Tran stood alone, staring out through the transparent hull as the stars stretched ahead in quiet brilliance. Behind her, the last of the navigation data uploaded into the fleet's memory banks, pointing the way toward a newly discovered cluster of place, untouched, unnamed, and free. But before the fleet turned fully away, Riva did one final thing. She reached down to her console, opened the long-range transmitter, now barely able to connect with the old galaxy, and recorded a message. Her voice was steady, filled not with anger, but with clarity. To those who still watch us, or fear us, or wonder where we've gone, she said, know this. We are not lost. We are not defeated. We have simply moved beyond your reach. You closed the gates. We built new ones. Then she paused and in a softer tone added, we aren't gone. We've simply chosen a different sky. With that, she sent the message unencrypted, open for anyone to hear if they were still listening. Back in the heart of the galaxy, that message reached systems like a quiet wave that never faded. Council channels lit up with confusion, shock, and, for some quiet respect. Delegates listened in silence. The species who once doubted humanity now began to wonder if the Council itself was the real threat. Protests sparked on distant worlds. Old allies of Earth began asking questions. If the humans could survive alone, why were others still told they couldn't? Why were they kept under the Council's rules? The message from Riva didn't start a war, but it started something else. Doubt. That doubt grew in the minds of the younger species, the ones still fighting for voice and recognition. In the cycle that followed, quiet rebellions began not in weapons, but in ideas. Trade ships started going off course. Border stations stopped reporting back. Whole communities began seeking out the path of Enoch, as it came to be called a path away from control and toward freedom. Humanity had left without a single shot fired at the Council, yet their escape echoed louder than any battle ever could. It wasn't just a victory, it was a lesson. You don't have to ask for permission to be free. Meanwhile, in the fleet, time moved forward. Ships once seen as arcs were now homes. Gardens had replaced storage bays. Schools taught not only the history of Earth, but the skills needed to thrive in the unknown. They didn't forget where they came from, but they no longer let it define them. Earth was a memory, a beginning, but the future was out here. Among the stars no one had claimed, the fleet had begun building a new station around a blue dwarf star, slowly turning it into a permanent settlement. This would be the first of many. The dream was not just to survive, but to build something better, something unshaped by fear, judgment, or control. Riva, now older but still steady, watched as the first structures came together, crafted from the same parts once used to flee. We didn't just escape, she said to her crew one evening. We created something the galaxy couldn't imagine: a free people, united not by rule, but by purpose. And in that silence, as lights flickered across the dark, the stars seemed to open wider. The Council never chased them again. Perhaps they feared the damage to their image. perhaps they knew they could not catch what had already passed beyond them. Either way, humanity had vanished from their control, and that loss, quiet as it was, changed everything. Reports of ghost ships and far-off systems became more frequent. New settlements with human-style tech were spotted on the edges of old star charts. But no council fleet could ever find their center. Humanity had become something else, not a rogue species, but a symbol, a spark, proof that you didn't need permission to rise. And though many still debated their place in history, one truth remained: the humans were free. And so, from the very edge of everything once known, the fleet turned its engines one last time, casting a final look at the galaxy behind them, not with regret, but with calm pride. They had faced exile, judgment, and silence. They had lost friends, homes, and names. But they had never lost themselves. The stars ahead were endless, the galaxy behind them, just a chapter. One that had tried to end them, but instead had pushed them to evolve. As the fleet vanished into the great unknown, only the echo of Riva's words remained. We aren't gone. We've simply moved beyond your reach. And with that, humanity disappeared into the stars, not lost, but finally, truly free.